Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 17, overall Episode 293 today of Live with CDP Sports Talk here on this Friday, June 23rd, 2023. As always, guys, Live with CDP Sports Talk is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210 or email them at info@barrycullen.com as well. And as always, guys, Live with CDP Sports Talk is on weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, unless there's Columbus Hoots baseball on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in the Metro Atlanta area as well. Guys, I'm just waiting for my guest to come on today. I'm really looking forward to speaking to him. His name is A.J Jakubec. He is the radio play-by-play announcer for the CFL Ottawa REDBLACKS on TSN 1200 in Ottawa, and he's also the co-host on The Drive on TSN 1200 from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays, as well as TSN 1200. And A.J Jakubec is a 26-year sports broadcasting veteran who's been with TSN 1200 in Ottawa for 17 years after stops through British Columbia and his native Edmonton. And AJ's also done some play-by-play work with obviously the REDBLACKS, Ottawa 67s of the Ontario Hockey League, Ottawa Senators, the Edmonton Oil Kings, and the Ottawa Fury FC as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking to AJ about his career and also about the Ottawa REDBLACKS, who are off to an 0-2 start so far. They lost their opener 19-12 to the Montreal Alouettes, and then they lost their home opener 26-15 to the Calgary Stampeders. The Ottawa REDBLACKS do have a bye week this week, so their next game for the REDBLACKS would be Friday, June 30th, when the Edmonton Elks take on the Ottawa REDBLACKS next Friday night in Ottawa as well. And I'm going to ask AJ about the status of Jeremiah Mazzoli, who's been out for over a year with his major injury again. And Ottawa's had some struggles with Nick Arbuckle and their rookie quarterback. So we'll see what happens there. But again, I want to say thank you to AJ Jakubec for coming on today, and look forward to speaking to him as well. Guys, just bear with me as we wait for AJ to come on. But I have a little bit of NFL news first. The Buffalo Bills this morning announced extensions for two of their most important leaders within the organization. General Manager Brandon Beane and head coach Sean McDermott have signed contract extensions through 2027 with the Buffalo Bills. They've done a good job in restoring the culture to winning in Buffalo. Both joined the Bills back in 2017. McDermott came from Carolina, and so did Beane. And I personally would have waited until after the 2023 season to give them extensions, because to me, I think the Buffalo Bills the last 3 years at least should have got to the Super Bowl once, in my opinion. So Beane and McDermott are signed in Buffalo until 2027, which is good news for the Buffalo Bills fans. But I don't know. I would have personally waited another season, but we'll see. Anyways, guys, my guest is here, and I'm going to bring him on. Good morning, AJ. How you doing?
Hey, Chris. Great to be with you.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on. You're my first media person from Ottawa on my show.
Well, geez, low bar that you set here, but no, it's great to be with you. It's certainly great meeting you in Guelph, and look forward to chatting with you with whatever you want to talk about.
Hey, I was going to say yesterday your station was at the golf tournament for the Ottawa Hospital. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, great event. We had a couple of great events this week. We were live on location Monday at the Kyle Turris Capital City Condors Golf Invitational, and that's an event with essentially you've got people with special needs and all sorts of walks of life, people with autism, whatever it might be, but an opportunity for them to play hockey amongst each other. And that program's been going on for 15 years now. And just to see the joy in, the kids and the adults' faces that experience being able to play hockey, being able to be in a team environment, fantastic stuff. That was Monday. And then yesterday we were on location at another event that was raising money for clinical trials for the Ottawa Hospital, and they've raised about $9 million in the last 6 years for this. So, something that's near and dear to my heart because unfortunately I've spent some time in Ottawa Hospital, better now, but had some health struggles in 2019 and early 2020, and such an important part of the community that really touches everybody. So to have, Ray Bork and Al Iafrady and Chris Nyland and Kirk Muller, and past years they've had Larry Robinson and a lot of local players as well. It was fantastic to see, and just a great event to see that type of money raised.
You don't appreciate your health until it's taken away from you. So I was going to ask you, AJ, just a little bit about, can you just tell us about your battling acute pancreatitis back in 2020 or 2020 and spending 66 days in the Ottawa hospital?
Yeah, it was quite the journey. I was very fortunate for a lot of different reasons, but, the fact that it happened in December 2019, and my recovery in hospital at least ended at the end of February before recovering at home. You can understand probably in terms of timing why I was very fortunate, in the sense that, COVID really wasn't, it was coming at that point. But, for example, over the course of, those ended up being 69 days in the end in hospital. All those days, I was able to get support and visitors from my parents, from, over 80 different people came and visited me in a hospital. But essentially, I had an issue that was blocking my pancreas and bile duct, and was in ICU for 8 days. And, it was pretty touch and go in the early parts. In terms of recovery, ended up having 5 different procedures, and an infection put me back in hospital where I thought I might go back for a couple of days, and I was in for another month. And yeah, it was tough for sure. Off work for 6.5 months, but pretty healthy now. Pancreas is never going to be 100%, so you have to watch that. But real fortunate to have the people that I do in my life that help get me through a very difficult time. And certainly the people and staff at the Ottawa Hospital were just unbelievable in terms of, the type of care that I received, over the course of certainly my 2.5 months in hospital, but even my home care as well.
Just like I said, hats off to the people in the hospitals, because sometimes I don't think they get enough credit for what they do, and it's not an easy job. And then with that pandemic for 2 years as well, that was not easy to do with as well.
For sure. And, the one thing, you weren't happy about anything with the pandemic, but I was happy just to see the type of support that healthcare staff received after the fact, because even I probably, I always appreciated it, but not to the same extent that I did after the care that I received. And, those people are miracle workers, and probably working too long of hours for not enough money. But, to go above and beyond, as so many people did in my case, something that I'll be thankful for the rest of my life.
I just had a nurse on from Owen Sound, Ontario, on my show a month ago as well, and I just have so much respect for their jobs, because it's not always easy doing that job in there as well.
Yeah, they're incredible human beings to be able to do what they do for sure. And I had so many that just again went over and above Call of Duty, where people would come in and people that weren't even assigned to me that day that knew me would come in and just say hi and just see how I was doing, and that type of stuff goes a long way, just to know that people care about you and people want the best for you. And when maybe you don't want to go for that walk that you need when you're trying to recover, and people like that are saying, look, you come on, let's go for a 5-minute walk. It's pretty hard to say no when there's people doing it for the right reasons. And yeah, can't say enough about my care and about the job that they do.
And also having a strong family support as well. Now, I was going to say, AJ, what was it like getting back into the broadcast booth for the first time? And do you find that you appreciate it? Not that you didn't before, but do you find you appreciate what you do even more than you did in the past after what happened?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that day was very emotional because had a lot of different people on to talk about my journey when I did get back after 6.5 months off. And I was very thankful for my employers at TSN Radio, just in tough times to stick with me as well. So very thankful about so many different things. And yeah, it was very emotional when I returned to the airwaves. And the people of Ottawa, I'm from Edmonton originally, and I've spent time all across Canada, from Edmonton to Melfort, Saskatchewan, to Trail, BC, to Kelowna. And now I've been in Ottawa for 17 years now, and the city has really embraced me. I've really embraced the city. It's home now. And yeah, to be able to connect with the listeners that day was certainly very special. And in terms of just my approach on life, yeah, I think I was probably in a good place before that, where I was very appreciative of where I was and what I was doing each and every day, and really trying to travel as much as possible. That's a big passion of mine, and that's continued. I was at 27 countries. I think I was at 8 countries visited in 20 before I went on a 6-week trip in 2018, and then a couple of big trips in 2019. And so I was at 27 countries, and that's been a priority of mine for sure since we were able to start traveling again. So since, late 2021, I kind of started traveling to see Canada play in their World Cup qualifying run, going to Mexico City and the Azteca Stadium in 2021. And then after that, traveling across the country and then going to see them play in places like El Salvador and Costa Rica. That like El Salvador is a place I probably wouldn't have considered visiting before, and absolutely loved it. Spent 3 days there, but the people there were fantastic. So yeah, and then ended up going to the World Cup, and so now I'm at 36 countries. So it's been 8 to 36 in about 5 years, and that's something that I want to keep doing, is just seeing different parts of the world, because I'm passionate about travel. And you realize when something like that happens to you that you only get one life here, and you better make the most of it while you're here.
It changes your perspective. And I had a musician on last week, Chelsea Ray, and she the only reason she survived her health problems when she was younger because of the music industry. Her parents got her into music, and for some reason that helped her fight her battles with cancer as well. And I just love, this is one of the reasons why I love doing this show, is the storytelling aspect of it as well.
Yeah, that's great stuff for sure. And it's it definitely changes your perspective a little, for sure, depending on where you're at life. I mean, I can imagine for some people it changes their perspective a heck of a lot. And for me, there's no doubt. I mean, you think of kind of the toughest times in hospital, and all of a sudden you realize your bad day is maybe, it's one of the things I'll say though, is no matter how good or bad your situation is, when you're dealing with difficulties, one of the things I learned from people that were in a tougher situation for me, people that, were battling cancer, for example, is those were the people that were most sympathetic to my cause. And it made me realize that no matter how big or small your problems are, if you have problems, there are problems and they need to be dealt with. And you can't overlook those types of problems. And I know mental health is such a big part of, where we're heading in terms of trying to appreciate and understand that if you're having a bad day, reach out, help, ask for help, whether it's through a friend, whether it's through a professional. No problem that you're dealing with is insignificant. So that's one of the things that I learned through this situation as well. And, hopefully better for it in the long run.
And I was going to say too, AJ, I did take the GO train into Toronto on Sunday for the Argonauts home opener against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And unfortunately, when I left the GO train in Burlington, one of the trains struck a patron, and they ended up shutting the train down. And long story short, not one single person on that train, on the GO train, complained about what happened. It just basically put everything into perspective. As much as I love the Argonauts and going to a football game, it just deepest sympathies to the family and friends of this person that got hit by the GO train.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. That's awful to hear, and glad that people were handling it the right way, because there are bigger things sometimes than what you're dealing with. And sometimes you need to take a breath. I even have to remind myself of that sometimes, where you might be delayed for this reason or that reason. And when something like that is so life-changing for one individual, glad to hear that so many people were appreciative and understanding of what was going on.
Yeah, and that's not an easy job, being a police officer, paramedic, and stuff like that, because you also have to deal with the human side of it as well. So I have so much respect for first responders.
No doubt, they help save my life when it comes to first responders, and 911 call that definitely saved my life in some difficult circumstances, and certainly law enforcement as well to deal with the type of stuff that they deal with. They are everyday real life heroes in our world. I think, if you love sports, you think of athletes as heroes, and they certainly can be, for sure, especially, in days like what I was talking about off the top, where they're raising money for different communities for great causes. But, those people that are on the front lines of, whatever needs to be done, they're there for you. And I can't say enough about those people on the front lines.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know you call some OHL games with the Ottawa 67s. I had Mike Farwell on the other day from the Kitchener Rangers, and
Awesome.
we talked about his cystic fibrosis Farwell for Hire campaign as well. And he's such a great guy, and I've been very lucky to have such great guests on my show the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, Mike's a great guy, great broadcaster. Certainly followed in the footsteps of one of the all-time legends in this business, in Don Cameron in Kitchener, who was calling games for basically 50 years.
Yep.
Before Mike took over. So big shoes, but Mike, is such a quality, hardworking, talented broadcaster, and that's a great guest for sure. And I love my time in the OHL. I mean, essentially, that was going to be my last year calling games. Was the year I discussed with my health problems, and unfortunately, because of that, and because of COVID, that ended up being my last year. My last game was actually the day before I ended up going to hospital, calling Ottawa 67s games. So it was a lot of fun. I did Kelowna Rockets games for a year, and then 3 years of the Edmonton Oil Kings, and basically 14 years of Ottawa 67. So major junior hockey, and just junior hockey in general, has been in my blood. And, so many great people that I was able to, be a part of. When you think of Brian Kilray, Hockey Hall of Fame head coach, and what he accomplished in the game, and to have my first 4 years riding the bus on the Ottawa 67's bus with him and his entourage and some of the great teams that they had, a team, kind of a lunch bucket team in 2005 that went to the Memorial Cup and lost in the semifinals to Sidney Crosby and Rimouski before they lost to one of the greatest junior teams of all time, a London Knights team that, was close to going the entire season unbeaten. Not quite that close, but still, I mean, they did not lose a lot of hockey games from the start of the season. So many great memories from junior hockey. And just love the people involved in the game as well, especially people that have been there a long time, like Mike Farwell.
And I also have had Mike Stubbs and Jim Van Horn from the London Knights, and Manny Pava and Steve Bell from the Windsor Spitfires, Mark McKelvey from the Owen Sound Attack. All these guys have been so great with what I'm trying to do, get into the radio industry at the age of 51. And everyone in your industry, AJ, has been really supportive of what I'm attempting to do.
Well, it's great to hear. And, certainly happy to come on with you here today. And, Mike Stubbs is from the Ottawa area, just in Carleton Place, and talk about a great guy that's so talented at what he does. And Manny Pava is another one of my favorites. Certainly every time in Windsor now, and every time we were in Windsor, he was a guy that was going above and beyond to make sure that we were looked after on and off the ice. So many great people in the game across this country. When you talk about don't know as many in the Quebec League, but when you talk about Ontario and the West for me and my travels. And, a lot of those people are some of my best friends to this day, which is what it's all about. I mean, you love broadcasting hockey, but it's about everything else. I'm a big journey over the destination type of guy. I mean, yeah, it's great to have goals and to try and reach those goals. But, and I was fortunate, my goal was to broadcast games in the NHL, and I've been fortunate to call 9 games in the NHL. It's not 9 seasons or anything like that, but I was able to reach my goal, and that was fantastic. But when you think back about everything, that it's not about accomplishments or where I got to or anything like that. It's about all the different friendships that I've made. The fact that, I've gone on trips with guys like Cam Moon and John Rosen, who, when I met them, they were play-by-play voices in the Western Hockey League, just like me, and Red Deer and Everett, and now Cam's voice of the Oilers, and John's covering the LA Kings. So it's really cool just to have those friendships where you just pack up, and even 10 years later, if you're not seeing those people each and every day or each and every month or anything like that, those friendships where you can go and hang out and have a beer or two and catch up and just kind of pick up where you left off. That's what it's all about for me, is just the different people that you meet along the way and the different things that you're able to do along the way.
Absolutely. And this past weekend, I was able to cover the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame ceremony in St. Mary's. I don't know if you've ever been to this Baseball Hall of Fame there. It's beautiful. It's our smaller version of Cooperstown. And I was able to meet Fergie Jenkins and interview Jesse Barfield, Josh Barfield, and John Olerud. And it's like, who would have thought 3.5 years ago this guy would be interviewing Hall of Fame players and legends in the sport, and broadcasters such as yourself and many others. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity.
Well, that's great. And yeah, I haven't been to St. Mary's or the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, but I think it's important that we have institutions like that. Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, various, Ottawa Sports Hall of Fame, for example, has inducted, some friends of mine. And yeah, it's important that their legacy continues on so that people know who not just the great athletes were, but the great people who have contributed to our communities.
Absolutely. And it's actually been a great time for Canadian sports as well, with Jamal Murray winning the NBA title with the Nuggets, and then Dane Smith with the Buffalo Bandits winning the National Lacrosse Championship. And I believe the Golden Knights had a couple of players from the Kitchener area on as well. So anytime somebody from Canada does well in sports, you got to put your thumb up and just celebrate as a country.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate. Like, you and I are close to the same age, and man, when I was growing up, and I've been passionate about so many different sports, but it was hockey, hockey, hockey. And I think there were just so few athletes that you would see in those other sports. Some great trailblazers for sure. But, now you look around the sporting world, and you could start with the most popular sport in the world in soccer. And the fact that we have two of the best players in the world, Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David, and world-class players like Stefan Eustachio and Tajon Buchanan and Kyle Larin and Alistair Johnston that are playing at the highest level each and every week. And, finally got a chance to qualify for another men's World Cup, or women's team winning the Olympic gold in 2021 in Tokyo. Basketball, more players than any other country outside the United States in the NBA right now, and back-to-back years where it's not a bench player or anything like that. We're talking about primetime players, and Andrew Wiggins, and also Jamal Murray, as you mentioned, playing a big role in championship teams. Our women's team doing so well in basketball. And you look at golf and Brooke Henderson and what Nick Taylor did to end the Canadian Open drought. And we've got so many great players on the men's side. And Brooke Henderson's the best player we've ever produced in terms of man or woman. And the amount of titles and trophies that she's been able to win at such a young age. Tennis, and Bianca Andreescu winning a U.S. Open, and, Felix Auger-Aliassime and Denis Shapovalov being so close in so many different majors. And you can go on and on and on. Look at the talent in football these days. The fact that we're sending 5 players a year into the National Football League, and all these great players going into the NCAA, into the CFL, in U Sports. And so it's great to see that we're still an awesome hockey country. We still produce, I think probably the best players. Best player in the world is from Canada. It's Connor McDavid. If we ever played best on best again, which to me is asinine that we haven't really done so since the 2014 Olympics. I know there was a gimmicky World Cup with Team Young Guns and Team Europe and that sort of thing. But the fact that we haven't done a true best on best since 2014 is shameful for the sport. And if we ever get there again, I'm sure we'll see some more great battles involving Canada and the United States and Sweden and Finland and some of the other great hockey countries out there. So, yeah, I think so many great athletes and so many great different sports to recognize Olympic athletes that maybe only get recognized, every 4 years, and probably should get more due in between. But this has become not just a great hockey country, but a great sports country. And it's great to be able to kind of tell those stories and celebrate the athletes that, make our country better, because I truly believe that sports makes our country better, whether you're just being active and learning different lessons about teamwork and being around a group and hard work and that sort of thing. Those types of lessons that you just can't get them. You can get different lessons in different ways in life, but the lessons that you get through sport are just so different and so beneficial. And to have athletes lead the way in so many different sports, motivating the next group of athletes in our country, I think is just fantastic.
And I find sports brings people together, regardless of your political affiliations or whatever. I just find it's just something about it where you love your team and nobody cares about your background or your political affiliations, and just the love of that sport and that team.
Absolutely. Yeah. You think of 2010 in Vancouver, and I probably haven't seen this country more united than when the Olympic Games were going on in this country, and everyone was just celebrating the fact that we were Canadian. It wasn't about what part of the country you're from. We were all unified. And you're right. It can, there's so many different things in life that unfortunately are dividing us, but sport can be that great unifier, and really nothing unifies people like sport. You look at different momentous events through history, like the 1995 World Cup in rugby, when South Africa really was brought together through sport. at the end of apartheid. And there's so many different great examples of that. So no doubt about it. It does things that you just can't do. I mean, I just don't think people are very generous, but I just don't think you're raising $9 million in 6 years in a golf tournament, for example, if people like Larry Robinson and Ray Bork aren't putting their names to causes like that. So there's so many different positives when it comes to the sporting world, whether you're talking about spectator sports, whether you're talking about kids getting out there and getting active and learning some of the great life lessons.
Absolutely. And before we get into some Red Black questions, AJ, what are your thoughts on the World Juniors being announced being in Ottawa in 2025, and how much does that mean to the city of Ottawa and the surrounding area?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic. The city was a great host in 2009. That's one of the years that I moved back to my hometown in Edmonton, so I missed it. But you'd still talk to people this day in Ottawa, and that 2009 World Juniors produced some of the great moments in the history of this city when it comes to sports. When you think of a New Year's Day classic and John Tavares scoring a hat trick against the United States in a comeback win, and then one of the most famous goals in games ever in Canadian hockey history when Jordan Eberle scored with 5.6 seconds left to tie the Russians, and they end up winning that game in a shootout. And the interesting thing is, we were talking about this yesterday, no one even really remembers the final, the gold medal game against Sweden. It was all about the U.S. game, the Russian game. But I think what Ottawa did in that tournament, so they hosted the entire tournament. There was no smaller city. It was two venues, the venues that they're going to use here right now, the Civic Center, which is a smaller venue, which seats about 9,000. Now the arena at TD Place, and then the bigger venue in Canada, the Canadian Tire Center, where the Ottawa Senators play, will host all the Canada games and the medal round games. But the thing that Ottawa did, they sold out every game. And it didn't matter if it was Latvia playing or if it was Slovakia playing or who was playing, they all felt special. And I think that's what's important. This tournament is not just about those moments that we all love in Canada, about Canada winning gold or some of the great Canadian games. That this tournament is about the best young players in the world. The reason I love college football and college basketball and junior hockey, I love seeing the best young talent before they get to the NHL or the NFL or the CFL or the NBA or whatever it might be, or the soccer world. If you're talking about, the world, we had the U20s here in 2007, and Canada was a great host for that event. And, there's guys like Angel Di Maria, who won a World Cup this year for Argentina, that were playing in that tournament. And I remember seeing him play in 2007. And it's the same for this, whether you're watching the next, Sidney Crosby or Wayne Gretzky, who played in the tournament, or, most recently Connor Bedard, or you're watching a Tim Stützle, or you're watching Austria play. And maybe for 18 of those 22 players, this is going to be the biggest tournament with the biggest crowds that they ever play in front of. And, the fact that it has been ignored, I think, in some bigger cities, and certainly Ottawa, it's kind of like a small town in a bigger city, very similar to where I grew up in Edmonton as well. And the fact that it's not lost on them that they needed to support those other teams and games, because those games matter so much to them, and they wanted to give them the experience of a lifetime as well, not just cheer on Canada and the rest of the tournament. Who cares? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm sure Ottawa will be a great host, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of great hockey. I think this last World Juniors proved that, I'm not saying Germany or Switzerland or, Latvia or some of these other countries, Slovakia, are catching Canada or the United States anytime soon, but it feels like they're producing better players and we're getting some better games, which is fantastic. Not as many lopsided games in this past tournament, and hopefully that trend continues, because love seeing this game, love seeing Canada win, no doubt about it, but also love seeing this game grow around the world and people embrace it in what used to be some non-traditional hockey countries.
Absolutely. I was gonna AJ also as well. It's an exciting time for Ottawa sports, obviously. And then the Senators have new owners in Michael Anlauer, who's done so much for hockey here in the Hamilton area. And the Red Blacks obviously are off to a little bit of a slow start, 0-2. But this bye week, I think, came at a perfect time for the Red Blacks. And just thoughts on the Red Blacks in training camp and their start. And what is the possibility of Jeremiah Mazzoli being ready to start next Friday, June 30th against the Edmonton Elks?
Yeah, and it is an exciting time for Ottawa sports. And much like I said earlier about Canadian sport, love the fact that, yeah, the Ottawa Senators are the biggest team in town. And there's a lot of buzz around this team with some great young stars like Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson, amongst others. It's exciting with, the potential of a new arena on the horizon. I think a new arena is needed, especially in the central core, which, allows more people from Gatineau, where there's 350,000 people. Ottawa's an area, the National Capital Region has 1.5 million people, but, you're talking about almost 25% of that coming from the Quebec side, and they need to be serviced better. The people in the east end of the city need to be serviced better. And I think it's just important that, especially with COVID and, a lot of government workers working from home in the last couple of years, that the downtown core gets revitalized here again, because, it's important to have a busy and thriving center core of your cities. So would love to see that. Michael Anlauer, heard nothing but good things about him.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure he's going to be great for this franchise. But yeah, we've got a soccer team in Atlético Ottawa run by Atlético Madrid that lost to Forge FC in the league final last year in front of 15,000 people at TD Place, and a long-standing junior hockey team that's been here since 1967, and the Ottawa 67s, and the Gatineau Olympiques, who've been every bit as successful on the other side of the river in Gatineau, and baseball in the Ottawa Titans, and basketball in the Ottawa Blackjacks, and world-class youth sports programs in the Ottawa GGs and the Carleton Ravens, who annually have the highest attended game in university football in this country, with the Panda game where they get 25,000 people. Annually have the biggest crowds in basketball in this country in youth sports, where they get 10,000 for the Capital Hoops Classic. And Dave Smart's, and I know he's not the head coach anymore, but he runs the men's and women's team with Danny Sinclair on the women's team and Taffy Charles running the men. And they both won national titles this past year. And the fact that he's helped raise the bar for basketball in this country, especially at the youth sports level, I think is something that definitely needs to be recognized. So yeah, it's a great place to be and work when it comes to the sports world. And back to your question about the Ottawa REDBLACKS, where you're talking about a fan base that was kind of kicked in the groin time and time again with, never mind just bad football teams, but bad ownership groups in the 90s and 2000s with Rough Riders and Renegades. And I don't think a lot of people expected pro football to come back here, given what had happened before. And, the REDBLACKS have been fantastic for this community on and off the field, and winning a Grey Cup in 2016, and some of the great moments that have come along the way. You think of 2015 and a heartbreaker for Hamilton, but one of the great moments in CFL history when Henry Burris hit Greg Ellingson for a miracle touchdown pass to help send them to the Grey Cup for the first time since 1981. And those are the moments, again, kind of the journey rather than the destination type of thing. Just because you don't win a championship doesn't mean you don't have great moments. That to me still is my favorite moment in Ottawa REDBLACKS history, and helped set the table for a dramatic Grey Cup win the next year, an upset win of the Calgary Stampeders. So unfortunately, after 4 years where they won 42 games and reached 3 Grey Cups and won one of them between 2015 and 2018, the team's fallen on some hard times recently, and especially at home, they just haven't been good enough, where they've lost 24 of their last 25 games, which is astounding when you think about it. But, the fans still care about this team, which is great. And I hope Jeremiah Masoli is good to go this week. We'll see. He took first team reps the last couple of weeks of training camp, but still some physical and mental hurdles to get over at that point. At that point, they said, well, this is probably going to be after the bye week. Well, after the bye week, pretty much now here, because Ottawa's in their bye week. So I think we'll find out Monday who's going to be the guy. And after 10 turnovers in the first couple of weeks, Nick Arbuckle threw 4 interceptions, Tyree Adams threw 1, and they don't have an offensive touchdown. The only touchdown they scored was through Brandon Dandridge. I think Tyree Adams and Dustin Crum, you saw in preseason in Guelph when they played the Argos, that they've got a couple of young guys that have promise and potential, but I think the fans are really hoping that Masoli is going to be ready to go. If they had to go with Adams and Crum this year, I think grudgingly fans would probably appreciate that if it came to that, and show a little bit of patience if they showed some promise. And I think both have shown quite a bit of promise so far in their young CFL careers. But in the end, especially after losing the amount of games and home games that they've lost the last few years, I think the fans believe that the rest of the roster is ready to compete with some of the better teams in the CFL. And to do that, they're going to need their starting quarterback. So we'll see where Jeremiah Masoli is at. That injury was just gruesome. It never should have happened. It's a stain on the league what happened last year with Garrett Marino. And, he should have never played another game in the league after that again. But in the end, that's water under the bridge. Whether he played a game or not, he's not in the league anymore. Can't imagine we'll ever see him again. That really doesn't matter at this point, because the injury was still going to be the same, and the complications, the infections that Jeremiah Masoli had, and just the fact that his recovery was delayed because of some of those complications made this even more gruesome than the injury looked, and it certainly looked really bad on the surface. So hopefully he's going to be physically and mentally ready to go, and if he is, then we'll see what he provides. I mean, he's 35 years old. Hasn't played in a year, and he was coming off a major injury before that. I thought he played pretty well last year early on, even though they lost all 4 of those games. They were really close against Winnipeg, a couple of those games. So, and one of those games was against BC and Nathan Rourke, who was just starting to come into his own. So we'll see if he plays at the same level that we saw even early last year. I think Ottawa's going to win some football games, and they'll be competitive in the East.
Absolutely. AJ, do you have time for 2 more questions?
Absolutely.
Definitely. Okay, this one I wanted to ask you as well. What are your thoughts on the Ottawa REDBLACKS coaching staff for 2023 and new head coach Bob Dice? And do you think long-term this coaching staff can get this franchise turned around back into winning again?
I do. I've known Bob since 2016 when he took over the special teams coordinator role on this football team. And he's just a gem of a human being. You can see why he's a leader of men. You can see why people want to play for him, because he sets a high standard and he holds players accountable and he holds everyone accountable. And, he wants people to reach that standard. But at the same time, he cares about people, and that's important to him. It's not just about the football. It's those little things about asking about people's families and where people are at. And he truly does care about people. That's when you talk to players, they know that he cares about them as human beings, and that he wants that to get the most out of them as football players. And how he does that is by setting a high standard and holding players accountable. So I think that's the best type of combination you could have in a head coach. I do like the staff that he's brought in. Baron Miles and his defense, they've been outstanding so far. I mean, the offense, we'll wait and see. It's been a struggle out of the gate, but again, they need their starting quarterback. So in the end, he'll be judged based on wins and losses, just like every other coach is. But I do think they have a fantastic human being who has the potential to be a really, really good coach in this league.
Okay. And the last question I wanted to ask you before we wrap this up, because I know you're on the drive today from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on TSN 1200?
Yeah, 4-6. Yeah.
4-6. Okay. 4-6. Okay. No problem. What are your thoughts on Dave Thielen, Gene Gaines, and Greg Marshall recently introduced into the Ottawa Wall of Honor? And what are your thoughts on all three of them as players?
Yeah, I mean, I never got a chance to see Thielen or Gaines play, but you just talk to people and you look at their resumes, and I mean, they speak for themselves. And a couple of legends of the game, and great to see them honored. I do love the fact that even though it is the Ottawa REDBLACKS, that this franchise, the franchise records carry over from the Rough Riders to the Renegades, because even though it is a different name and different ownership, and it is a different franchise, in the end, it's Ottawa football history, and I'm glad they've kept it all together. So to honor those three players, and Greg Marshall, who, yeah, I do remember watching him play in the early 80s when I started watching Canadian Football League games in Edmonton. The first game I remember is actually the 1981 Grey Cup, and it involved Edmonton and Ottawa. So, which ended up being a classic game between kind of a David and Goliath, and Ottawa almost pulling the upset. And little did I know at the time that my future was going to be in Ottawa. So, yeah, I mean, three great players. They do have a great legacy of football in this city. It was a football city first. NHL came here in 1992. So in the 60s and 70s in particular, in the Ross Jackson era, and then, in the 70s when you had Tom Clements and Condredge Holloway at quarterback and so many other great Hall of Fame caliber players, that football was number one. And football is still a strong number two here, which is great to see. But it took the REDBLACKS back to recognize some of the people that deserve to be recognized, for sure. And I think one of the cool things to see is not only is Ottawa a great city when it comes to football history and tradition and those great teams in the 60s and 70s, but you'll look at the hotbed that is Ottawa football today, and you've got 5 players in the NFL. You've got Jesse Luketa and Neville Gallimore and Luigi Villain and Eli Yanku and Jonathan Sutherland, who just signed to the Seattle Seahawks as an undrafted free agent this past year. And you're talking about a lot of young talent that's come in all at the same time. There's a lot of players playing NCAA football. You look around the Canadian Football League, and there's Ottawa players or Ottawa or Carleton grads that are littered all over the CFL. Just have to look at the Argos, and who's the best Canadian receiver in the game right now? It's Curly Gittens Jr. Where is he from? He's from Ottawa. So you talk to people like Dwayne Ford that are so passionate about the Canadian game, that played the game, that broadcast the game, that are still involved in the game, and know all the different players from the grassroots level up. And he calls it the capital of Canada when it comes to football, and that it is the hotbed of Canadian football right now. So, and would it be that way if we didn't have 2 university programs and a CFL team? I mean, maybe we'd still be producing players, but the fact that people come, and that's what it's all about for me, is people have a chance to come watch CFL players when they're growing up and then say, I want to play football. And I don't have to get to that level, but maybe they get a scholarship out of it in U Sports or in the NCAA. And maybe it's just something that, keeps them out of trouble and when they're in high school or junior high, and keeps them busy so that they're not doing other things that, maybe they shouldn't be doing. And so many people talk about that aspect of it. And it's great to see it all kind of works together and the synergy that you have. And, fortunate that, football plays such a big role in this city when you talk about where we're at right now.
And I'm hoping to get to Ottawa. I've never been to Ottawa, so I need to get down to a REDBLACKS game, a 67s game, and a Senators game as well.
Yeah, it's a great setting. It's look, I mean, Canadian Tire Center can be rocking when like this year, and it's kind of had a bit of a reputation as a place that can be very quiet. And they haven't had great crowds in recent years because the fans basically weren't going to support Eugene Melnyk after some of the comments that he made and some of the things that he'd done. And, to their credit, they've kind of put their money where their mouths are, and they've supported the team since his passing. And I expect things to head to a different level with Michael Andlauer taking over fully once the I's are dotted and T's are crossed in the fall. So, it's not the greatest location for a game, but it is still a fun place to watch a game. And when you talk about Lansdowne and 67s and Atlético Ottawa and Red Blacks and Blackjacks and all the other events that they have there, and they've had some great events there, whether it's the Brier or World Curling Championships or Davis Cup or Volleyball Nations League. A lot of different great events have come here, and next thing is going to be the World Juniors, of course. But it's such a great setting on the canal, with all the different restaurants and bars in the vicinity. Great place to grab a bite before or after the game and just meet with friends. And that's what it's all about. So, look forward to hosting you here in Ottawa, because it is a great place to watch sports.
And my current favorite Argo right now is Curly Gittins Jr., who played for the Wilfrid Laurier Golden Hawks, and obviously he's from Ottawa. And I was so happy Penball Clements was able to keep the core together and sign him for 3 more years. But definitely, I was going to say, AJ, thank you so much for coming on today. And before we wrap this up, what advice would you give to those who are looking to pursue a career in the media industry, not just myself in TV and radio? And where can my audience find you on social media and your next broadcast with the Red Blacks against Edmonton next Friday?
Okay, so I'll get to the advice last. And by the way, Chris, love what you're doing, so keep at it. People can find me on social media at AJ on Sports on Instagram. It's mainly just travel stuff. I love to travel, as I mentioned earlier, really passionate about it. More of my work stuff is on Twitter at the Super AJ. It used to be at AJ on Sports for both. The reason I changed my Twitter handle is because the nurses, when I was talking to you before, they used to call me the Super AJ. So I kind of took that forward with me and in my work life as well. And I didn't name myself the Super AJ, if you're wondering. It was the nurses in the Ottawa hospital in 2019 and 2020. So where can people hear me? 4 to 6 Monday to Friday on TSN 1200 on the Drive, doing Red Blacks games. Next one Friday against the Elks, doing Atlético Ottawa games. We broadcast all the home games. We broadcast home and away for the Red Blacks, and I travel with the team there. I do Sens pre and post game shows throughout the season, about a third of the games there, and also do Blackjacks basketball on TSN Plus and CEBL Plus. Had a game last night that was great. Went right down to the wire, and Montreal won it on a last second 3-pointer over Ottawa, 86-83. So what advice would I give? The media is changing. I mean, we saw that last week in our building as well. So it continues to change, and it's going to change going forward. But the reality is, as long as people keep watching sports, they're going to want to talk about sports. They're going to want to get content about sports. And so, whereas when I started in the business in 1997, I started at a radio station, and that's people were vying to work at radio stations, at newspapers, at television companies. Now those still exist, and in a different form. There's fewer jobs in traditional media, but there's more opportunities to do your own thing, whether it's podcasting. There's certainly more opportunities, and there's going to continue to be more opportunities to work for teams and leagues. I feel like there's going to be a split where, a lot of people are working for the leagues or teams, and a lot of people are going to be working, for whether it's podcasts or regular traditional media. But there's going to, as long as sports is thriving, and it's certainly thriving, billions of dollars in terms of the revenue that it's producing in various sports, people are going to want to talk about it. People are going to want to rant and learn more about their favorite teams. And so I do believe if you're passionate about sports and this is an industry that you want to join, yeah, it's something that I think you should pursue, even though the industry is changing. Doesn't mean there won't be work for people.
Absolutely. And today was my 293rd episode since March of 2020. And
That's
like
awesome.
I said, thank you so much. And I've been really lucky to get so many great guests on from 5 different countries. And AJ, you have an open invite to come back on my show anytime you'd like. And I really want to get down to Ottawa and catch a Red Blacks game and also see some hockey games there as well.
Absolutely. Well, hope to see you here soon to watch some hockey and football and whatever else you want to take in. And love what you're doing. 293 and counting. You're doing great.
Thank you so much, AJ, and good luck the rest of the year with the Red Blacks. And I'll be watching next Friday night when you guys take on those Edmonton Elks, who take on the Argonauts this Sunday in Edmonton. And I'm kind of worried about that game for the Argonauts because the Elks are going to end that losing streak at home at some point. And hopefully it won't be this Sunday.
Yeah, well, I just hope Ottawa finds a way to win a home game against the Elks. If I think both teams would like to sweep the other this year, but if they are going to split, I just hope that the Red Blacks and the Elks both win at home.
And like I was telling Tiger Cat fans last Sunday when they lost to the Argonauts, it's only a couple of games. It's a marathon season. You're going to have your highs and lows, but I love the CFL, and I'm thankful that you could come on here today and talk a little bit about Ottawa sports and yourself and some Red Blacks football as well, AJ.
Yeah, my pleasure, Chris. Happy to come on with you anytime.
And I'll do my best to catch you on the drive this afternoon from 4 to 6 on TSN 1200.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Thanks, AJ. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Take care.
You too. Thanks. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed Season 6, Episode 17 of Live with CDP Sports Talk on this Friday, June 23rd, 2023. That was A.J Jakubec, the play-by-play announcer for the Ottawa REDBLACKS of the Canadian Football League, and he's also the co-host on The Drive on TSN 1200 weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Nightly. And you can check out the website, tsn.ca/radio/Ottawa 1200 as well. Before we wrap it up, guys, last Saturday, I was able to do some media work for the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame ceremonies for the class of 2020 and 2023. And I got to interview one of the most famous Blue Jays and New York Yankee players at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, and he's the 2023 Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame inductee, number 29, Jesse Barfield. Live at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame here in St. Mary's, Ontario, for the class of 2023, and I have a special guest with me. He's a former Major League Baseball player and a former Toronto Blue Jays legend, right? Number 29, Jesse Barfield. Jesse, congratulations on being part of the Hall of Fame class of 2023.
Thank you very much. This is a great honor. Along with some great players here, I'm glad to be a part of the class of 2023 and inducted to the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. It's quite an honor.
When did you find out you were getting inducted into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, Scott called me a few months back early in the morning and gave me the good news.
And how special is this since you spent a lot of your Major League career with the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, this is something that you dream about, something I really wanted to be a part of, and thank God it happened.
What was it like being drafted by the Blue Jays in the late 70s? I believe it was 77 by Pat Gillick.
I was thrilled. I didn't know what a Blue Jay was at the time, but I soon found out all about it. It's a great organization, and to this day, they still put out winners.
Do you remember your first game with the Jays and your first game at Old CNE Exhibition Stadium?
Oh, I remember my first game. It was at Comiskey Park in Chicago, and then later on, coming back September call-up, my first game at Exhibition Stadium, I was really thrilled. In fact, the game that I started, my first game, you had Bell in left, Mosby in center. I was in right in my first game. That's pretty awesome.
The greatest outfield in Blue Jays history as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, sir, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thoughts on the Shaker and George Bell as well, your teammates?
yeah, those guys are great. We grew up in the organization, learned how to win together, and I'm glad to be a part of it with them.
What did you remember most about that '85 team, which still has the record for most regular season wins at 99 wins?
I would say the way we came together as a team, we almost came back and caught the Tigers year before. We ran out of gas, but the next year we wouldn't be denied.
And what were your thoughts on the rivalry with the Detroit Tigers in the 1980s?
Well, that was a great rivalry. Trammell Whitaker, all those great hitters, pitchers, Jack Morris. They had a great team.
I was going to say, how hard was it going from Toronto to New York in 1989 when they traded in the Yankees for Al Leiter?
It was difficult because I left all my friends, but I made a lot of close friends with the Yankees and still keep in touch with those guys too. You know, it was time. I'm glad it happened at the time it happened, but I do miss Toronto.
And thoughts on the legendary Yankee announcer Susan Waldman as well?
Yeah, Susan, everybody knows the story. When I read rescued her from that situation in the clubhouse. We became good friends after that, and she still talks about it.
Are you still involved with the game at all, Jesse?
I'm just enjoying my family right now.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you so much, Jesse. Congratulations for coming on Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. Thank you so much. All right, guys, that was courtesy of my YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you haven't, just go to Chris Palme Live with CDP Sports Talk as well. It was an honor and privilege being at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame ceremonies last Saturday. Thanks to Scott Crawford, the director of operations there, and it was a pleasure chatting with Fergie Jenkins, interviewing Josh Barfield, Jesse Barfield, and former Blue Jay John Olerud. I will play the rest of my interviews I did there on my up-and-coming podcast shows as well. Again, congratulations to Jesse Barfield, the class of 2023 Canadian Baseball Hall of Famer, former Blue Jay and Yankee legend as well. Again, I want to say thank you to my guest today, A.J Jakubec, the play-by-play voice of the Ottawa REDBLACKS, for coming on, and he's also on weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. on The Drive on TSN 1200 as well. Guys, my next live with CDP Sports Talk, Season 6, Episode 18, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, will be Tuesday, June 27th at 2:30 p.m. with my guest, Dr. Georgette Zanandi. She is currently the Executive Vice President of Corporate Class Inc. and a practice lead for their Center for Diversity and Inclusion as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Georgetta Zanandi this Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. I hope you guys can tune into that episode as well. Just 1 second, guys. And as always, live with CDP Sports Talk, as you know, is a weekly sports and entertainment talk show hosted by yours truly, Chris Palme, and is now on weeknights at 8 p.m. on WQEE 99.1 FM, the key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. As for the website, you guys can check it out at wqeefm.radio12345.com as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on these platforms on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And I want to say thank you to everybody for watching this live stream this morning as well. You guys, if you'd like to, you guys can follow my website. Check it out at beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. All my digital content and my previous podcast episodes on YouTube, or my audio platforms are on beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. Again, live with CDP Sports Talk is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210, or email them at info@barrycullen.com as well. Also, the wrap up with Barry Cullen Chevrolet. You guys, everyone could spring into summer at Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph with 3.99% financing for up to 60 months on 2023 Blazers, Traverse, or Equinox. And if you're an eligible Costco member, you can receive up to $750 on select SUVs. More information at barrycullen.com as well. I am also on TikTok. If you'd like to follow me there at Live with CDP, that's at Live with CDP on TikTok. I post a lot of content, podcast stuff, coaches and players interviews there as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talks. If you're into webinars or podcasting, check out StreamYard.com as well. Finally, guys, we're going to wrap this up. Live with CDP Sports Talk, the audio version is available on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Stitcher, Tuned In, and weeknights at 8 o'clock on WQEE 99.1 FM when it's not preempted by Columbus Hoots baseball on WQEE 99.1 FM as well. And you guys can also email or text Live with CDP Sports Talk Show at cpame19@gmail.com, or you can text the show at 519-820-7188 as well. And I want to say thank you to everybody listening to this show on audio platforms as well. CFL last night, BC 30, Winnipeg 6, an impressive win for the BC Lions. 3-0 now. Winnipeg drops to 2-1. Very solid win for the Lions against a quality opponent in the Blue Bombers. And tonight we got CFL action. Montreal and Hamilton, 7:30 p.m. TSN if you can't get down to Tim Hortons Field, or you can listen to the game on CHML 900 with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker, or you can listen to it on the Tigers audio network as well. Again, guys, I'm looking forward to my next podcast show, next Live with CDP Sports Talk, season 6, episode 18, Tuesday, June 27th at 2:30 p.m. with my guest, Dr. Georgette Zananti. She's an executive vice president at Corporate Class Incorporated, practice lead for diversity and inclusion as well. So I hope you guys can tune in to my next show, episode 294, again this Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Again, thank you to A.J Jakubec, the play-by-play announcer for the CFL's Ottawa REDBLACKS, and also the co-host on The Drive on TSN 1200 in Ottawa from 4 to 6 daily, for coming on today as well. I hope everybody has a great rest of the afternoon, and I'm looking forward to the CFL action tonight and on the Argos game on Sunday against the Elks at 7 o'clock on TSN. And if you can't get to Edmonton, obviously, or watch the game on TSN, you can listen to Mike Hogan and Ben Grant on TSN 1050 with The Call. I hope everybody has a great afternoon. And I want to say thank you again to A.J Jakubec for coming on, and everybody for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph and on WQEE 99.1 FM weeknights at 8 o'clock as well. Have a great afternoon, great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you Tuesday at 2:30 for the next edition of Live with CDP Sports Talk.